The courtroom was busy that morning, filled with people waiting for their cases to be called. The air was thick with the usual mix of tension, whispered conversations, and the occasional shuffle of papers. Among the crowd, a teenage boy walked in, carrying a small briefcase and dressed neatly, though not in the traditional lawyer's attire. His steps were calm and measured, yet there was a quiet confidence in the way he moved, a confidence that seemed unusual for someone so young. As he approached the bench, the judge looked up from the stack of documents in front of him. His eyes scanned the teenager, a slight smirk forming on his face. The judge had seen many inexperienced people try their hand at the law, but he had never seen one so young. He leaned back in his chair and raised an eyebrow, the expression clearly saying, "Who let this child in here?" The courtroom attendees were a mix of lawyers, defendants, and curious onlookers. They noticed the judge's reaction and began whispering among themselves. Some laughed quietly, thinking the situation was amusing. Others looked on, curious about why a teenager would even be standing there ready to argue a case. There was a general sense of skepticism, an unspoken agreement that this boy had no business being in a courtroom as a lawyer. The teen walked confidently up to the center of the room, where the counsel usually stood. He placed his briefcase on the desk, opened it, and began arranging his papers neatly. Every movement was deliberate, calm, and professional. Despite the judge's smirk and the murmurs from the audience, he showed no signs of nervousness. His eyes scanned the courtroom, meeting the judge's gaze without hesitation. The judge, clearly amused, leaned forward and addressed the teen. "Are you sure you belong here, young man? This is serious business, not a school debate." There was a subtle tone of mockery in his voice, as if he was testing the boy's composure. The teenager responded politely but with firm confidence. "Your Honor, I am here to present my case just like any other attorney. I have prepared thoroughly, and I am ready to proceed." His voice was clear and steady, projecting authority beyond his years. There was no arrogance, only a calm assurance that he belonged there. A few people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. Some were still skeptical, some were intrigued, and a few were starting to feel a strange sense of anticipation. The courtroom had seen many cases, but this was unusual. No one expected a teenager to stand there as a competent lawyer. The opposing lawyer, an experienced adult, looked down at the papers in front of him. He smirked slightly, thinking the boy would be easy to dismiss. He whispered something to the judge, perhaps a sarcastic comment about how amusing the situation had become. The judge chuckled quietly, clearly enjoying what he thought would be an entertaining display of inexperience. The teen, however, seemed unaffected by the mockery. He picked up one of his papers, glanced at it briefly, and then looked back at the judge. "Your Honor, may I present my opening statement?" he asked politely. There was a pause in the room. The judge's smirk wavered slightly, replaced by curiosity. He had not expected the boy to speak with such confidence. "Proceed," the judge said, his voice a mix of amusement and cautious interest. The teenager began to speak. Choosing his words carefully and clearly, he outlined the facts of the case, highlighting the key points and providing a logical structure that was easy to follow. He did not rush but spoke with a measured pace, ensuring that everyone in the courtroom could understand his points. His clarity was impressive, and even the most skeptical attendees began to pay attention. As he continued, the judge's expression changed. The smirk faded, replaced by a look of concentration. He listened intently, almost as if he could not believe what he was hearing. The teen's arguments were well organized, precise, and supported by relevant facts. There was no hesitation, no fumbling, only a clear, professional presentation of the case. The courtroom audience, initially skeptical, began to quiet down. The murmurs faded as people leaned forward, listening closely. Some whispered to each other, expressing surprise at the teenager's ability to speak like a seasoned lawyer. The atmosphere shifted from amusement to curiosity, then to genuine interest. The teen carefully referenced specific legal procedures and precedents. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had studied the law extensively, despite his young age. Each point he made was logical, backed by evidence, and delivered with clarity. He anticipated questions before they were asked, and addressed them with precise reasoning. It was clear to anyone paying attention that he had prepared meticulously. The judge, now fully attentive, tapped a pen against the desk. He had expected a childlike attempt at argumentation, But what he was witnessing was far beyond that. The teenager's voice, tone, and poise were all that of a trained professional. The judge's earlier amusement was replaced by a mix of disbelief and curiosity. He found himself leaning forward, listening more closely, trying to follow every detail. The opposing lawyer's smirk faded. He realized that this was not going to be as easy as he had thought. He had underestimated the teenager, and it was becoming evident that this young attorney was not only knowledgeable, but also capable of presenting complex legal arguments with ease. The courtroom, once filled with whispers of amusement, now held a tense silence with everyone focused on the teen's words. The teenager continued his opening statement, carefully explaining the situation from every angle. He used simple, clear language, making complex legal ideas understandable to everyone present. His demeanor remained calm and respectful, never showing irritation or frustration at the initial mockery he had faced. He exuded professionalism and maturity that made the audience sit up straighter in their seats. As he concluded his opening remarks, he looked at the judge and said, "Your Honor, I am ready to answer any questions or clarify any points as needed." His politeness and readiness to engage further demonstrated a level of maturity beyond his years. The judge, momentarily speechless, finally nodded. "Very well," he said slowly, his voice betraying a mix of surprise and respect. The courtroom was silent, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. The initial impression of a young, inexperienced boy had been completely overturned by his confident and professional presentation. As the teenager stepped back slightly, holding his papers neatly, there was a sense of anticipation in the room. The judge adjusted his glasses. The opposing lawyer shuffled his papers nervously, and the audience sat in quiet awe. The teen had proven, without a single display of arrogance, that he belonged in that courtroom. He had earned attention not through words of defiance, but through competence, clarity, and composure. The teen's briefcase, neatly arranged on the desk, seemed almost symbolic. It contained all his preparation, his knowledge, and his confidence. But more importantly, it symbolized the unexpected talent and dedication of someone young, who had been underestimated simply because of appearances. This was a moment that challenged assumptions and demonstrated that skill and professionalism could come in any form, even from someone who appeared too young to belong. The courtroom had shifted from amusement to intrigue, from skepticism to attention. The judge, once mocking, was now fully focused, realizing that this case would be unlike any other he had presided over. The teen, undeterred by the initial ridicule, had successfully captured the respect and attention of everyone present, simply by being prepared and presenting himself with dignity and intelligence. The stage was set for the case to unfold, with the teenage attorney ready to show that age was no barrier to skill, knowledge, and competence. The courtroom, once a place of doubt and mockery, had become a place of anticipation and silent admiration, all because one young individual had dared to step forward and prove that he belonged. The courtroom was still filled with a quiet tension, the kind that settles when everyone realizes that something unexpected is happening. The teenage attorney stood at the desk, calm and composed, ready to continue his work. The judge, who had started the morning with a mocking smile, now wore an expression of curiosity mixed with disbelief. He was not used to seeing such confidence in someone so young. The air was heavy with the unspoken question, could this boy really be as capable as he appeared? As the teenager began to speak again, the judge leaned forward slightly, his pen tapping the desk in rhythm with his growing attention. The teen carefully outlined the next stage of his argument, referencing specific rules and legal principles. His voice was clear, firm, and professional, yet there was a warmth in his tone that made the courtroom feel engaged rather than lectured. He did not speak down to anyone, and his words seemed to draw in everyone present, making even complex points understandable. The audience, once skeptical, was now completely focused. The murmurs of amusement had faded, replaced by a silence that reflected both awe and curiosity. Some of the lawyers in the courtroom exchanged surprised glances. They had expected a struggle, an awkward attempt at legal argumentation, but instead they saw someone who spoke with the confidence and skill of a trained attorney. Even the most experienced lawyers could not deny the boy's poise. The judge, attempting to regain his usual authority, interjected with a comment designed to test the teen. "Young man, are you certain that you understand the full implications of this case?" It is not a simple matter." There was a hint of sarcasm in his tone, a subtle challenge to see if the boy would falter under pressure. The teen responded without hesitation. "Your Honor, I have studied this case thoroughly. I understand the facts and the relevant laws. I am prepared to address any questions or concerns you may have." His words were polite, yet carried an unmistakable strength. There was no doubt in his voice, no trace of fear or doubt, only calm assurance. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed but unwilling to fully admit it. He had expected the boy to stumble at some point, yet every response was precise and confident. The courtroom, sensing the change in dynamic, leaned in even closer. People were now whispering to each other, not in mockery but in astonishment. They were witnessing something unusual, something remarkable. The opposing lawyer, who had initially dismissed the teen as an easy target, began to shift uneasily. He realized that this was not going to be an easy case. The teenager had anticipated the kinds of arguments he would make, and was prepared with responses that were clear, logical, and backed by evidence. Every point the teen made was delivered with care and attention, leaving little room for counter-arguments. The courtroom began to feel smaller somehow, as though the focus had tightened on the young attorney at the center. Witnesses who had been nervous at the start now found themselves even more intimidated. They had expected a simple, polite questioning, but the teen's precise and thoughtful questions made them rethink their answers. They stumbled occasionally, unsure how to respond to someone who clearly understood the law better than they did. The judge, still holding his pen, was now paying full attention. He no longer made jokes or mocking comments. Instead, he observed quietly, taking in each word and movement. The teen's ability to control the pace of the courtroom, to maintain professionalism under scrutiny, was something he had rarely seen in any attorney, let alone someone so young. As the questioning continued, the teenager highlighted contradictions and inconsistencies with skillful tact. He asked questions in a way that was firm but respectful, giving witnesses the opportunity to clarify without making them feel attacked. Each answer he received, he carefully noted, using it to build a logical argument that would support his case. The courtroom spectators, previously entertained by the novelty of a teenage lawyer, were now captivated by his performance. Parents whispered to each other, quietly marveling at the intelligence and composure of someone so young. Even students who had come to watch out of curiosity found themselves inspired. They could not help but admire the boy's ability to command attention and respect through skill and professionalism alone. The judge finally spoke, his voice steady, but tinged with newfound respect. "It seems you have prepared more thoroughly than many adults in this courtroom. Your understanding of the case is impressive." There was no trace of mockery in his tone now, only recognition of the boy's capability. The courtroom seemed to shift slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that something extraordinary was taking place. The teen nodded respectfully, acknowledging the comment without arrogance. "Thank you, Your Honor. I have done my best to prepare and understand every aspect of this case." His humility, coupled with his competence, only added to the courtroom's admiration. The opposing lawyer, now clearly on edge, attempted to challenge the teenager with a more complex line of questioning. He spoke quickly, trying to catch the boy off guard. But the teen remained calm, listening carefully, thinking before responding. Each answer was precise and confident, demonstrating not only knowledge but also the ability to think critically under pressure. Witnesses were visibly struggling now. The teenager's questions revealed details they had overlooked, points they had not considered. They felt the pressure of being questioned by someone who clearly understood the law better than most adults. There was a subtle tension in the room, a mix of respect, admiration, and disbelief. The judge observed all of this quietly, no longer needing to interject. He was beginning to realize that this case and this young attorney were unlike anything he had experienced in his career. The teen's calmness under pressure, his ability to present arguments clearly and logically, and his respect for everyone in the courtroom created an atmosphere that was both tense and impressive. As the session continued, the teen skillfully guided the proceedings, keeping the focus on facts and evidence. He avoided unnecessary drama, choosing instead to rely on logic and clarity. This approach only heightened the respect he received from the audience, the lawyers, and even the judge. It became clear that this was not just a performance or a youthful attempt at argumentation. It was genuine legal skill. The courtroom slowly transformed from a place of skepticism and mockery to one of intrigue and admiration. People began to realize that appearances could be deceiving. A young teenager, underestimated by many at first glance, had proven that age was not the measure of skill, knowledge, or professionalism. The teen concluded this segment of questioning with a brief, respectful summary, highlighting the key points and evidence that supported his case. Your Honor, I believe that the facts and evidence clearly support the argument I have presented. I am ready to continue as needed, and to address any further questions from the court or the opposing counsel. His tone remained calm and authoritative, showing both humility and confidence. The judge leaned back, adjusting his glasses. He nodded slowly, a quiet acknowledgement of the boy's abilities. The courtroom remained silent for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling in. The initial laughter and mockery had been replaced by respect, curiosity, and a growing sense of awe. The teenage attorney had not only defended himself against mockery, but had also set the stage for what was to come. He had demonstrated that preparation, skill, and composure could overcome skepticism and prejudice. The courtroom, once buzzing with amusement, now felt focused, tense, and respectful. Everyone had learned a lesson that morning. Never underestimate someone based on appearances alone. As the session drew to a temporary close, the teen collected his notes and organized his papers carefully. His calm and professional demeanor never wavered, even in the face of initial ridicule. The judge, still processing the boy's skill, made a note to observe the upcoming arguments closely. The opposing lawyer, humbled and cautious, realized that this case would demand his full attention. The audience left with a mix of awe and curiosity, talking quietly among themselves about the unexpected talent of the young attorney. The teenager, with quiet confidence and humility, had turned a room full of skeptics into witnesses of his capability, leaving an impression that would not soon be forgotten. The stage was now set for the next phase of the case, and everyone in the courtroom understood that they were watching something remarkable unfold. The courtroom settled into a quiet focus as the session resumed, everyone now fully aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The teenage attorney, calm and poised, stood ready to continue his work, having already won the attention and, to some degree, the respect of the judge and audience. The initial mockery had faded, replaced with a sense of anticipation and curiosity. People could hardly believe that someone so young could command such confidence and skill in a room full of adults. The teen began by carefully examining the evidence presented in the case. Each document he held, each fact he referenced, was part of a larger argument that he had meticulously prepared. He spoke slowly and clearly, making sure that each point was understood by everyone present. The judge leaned forward, clearly trying to follow the logic, while the audience listened with growing interest. Even the opposing lawyer, who had initially thought this would be an easy case, had begun to recognize the teenage attorney's skill. When questioning a witness, the teen demonstrated remarkable control. His questions were precise and thoughtfully phrased, leaving the witness little room for evasion. Yet he asked them with respect, never raising his voice or displaying impatience. The witnesses, initially nervous because of his age, found themselves responding with care, realizing that this was not a child's game but a serious legal examination. The courtroom began to sense the depth of his preparation and the sophistication of his reasoning. The judge, observing quietly, could not hide his surprise. He had presided over countless cases, yet few attorneys had the combination of composure, clarity, and strategic thinking that this teenager displayed. Every question, every reference to the law, every connection to previous cases was deliberate and effective. The teen had a way of guiding the courtroom, of steering the conversation toward clarity and truth, without ever seeming forceful or overbearing. As the session continued, the teenage attorney began to reveal more about his understanding of the law. He referenced specific precedents, carefully explaining their relevance to the current case. He demonstrated a keen awareness of how legal principles applied in practice, not just in theory. The judge's initial skepticism melted away entirely as he realized that this young attorney was operating at a level that few seasoned professionals reached. The opposing lawyer attempted to challenge him, throwing complex questions and hypotheticals in an effort to catch the teenager off guard. But the teen remained calm and measured. He listened carefully, considered his response, and then answered with precision. Each response built upon the previous one, strengthening his argument and demonstrating a depth of understanding that was astonishing given his age. It became increasingly clear that the courtroom had underestimated him. Audience members leaned forward in their seats, whispering among themselves about the young attorney's skill. Some had initially doubted his abilities, thinking this would be an amusing scene, but now they were captivated. People who had come to watch the trial out of curiosity found themselves absorbed in the logic and clarity of his arguments. The courtroom, once filled with skepticism, now felt electric with attention and intrigue. The witnesses, too, felt the pressure of his questions. They were challenged in a respectful but firm way, which forced them to think carefully about their answers. The teenage attorney had an uncanny ability to identify inconsistencies and contradictions without seeming aggressive. His focus was always on the truth and the evidence, not on theatrics or intimidation. This calm professionalism only added to the respect he was earning from everyone present. The judge could no longer disguise his astonishment. He had seen attorneys falter under pressure, but the teen's calm reasoning and command of the facts were beyond anything he had expected. The young attorney's demeanor was so steady that it left a clear impression. Age was irrelevant when knowledge and preparation were applied with confidence and care. The judge's occasional nods and thoughtful pauses reflected a growing acknowledgement of the boy's extraordinary ability. As the examination continued, the teen highlighted critical points in the case, carefully linking evidence to legal standards. Each connection he made was explained in simple terms, yet carried significant weight. The audience, lawyers, and witnesses alike were now following every word with careful attention. It was not only his knowledge that impressed them, but also his ability to communicate it effectively. He had an exceptional sense of timing, knowing when to pause, when to emphasize a point, and when to allow the audience and witnesses to reflect on what had been said. The courtroom atmosphere had shifted completely. What had started as a scene of amusement had turned into a display of remarkable skill and intelligence. The judge, previously mocking, now observed with quiet respect. The opposing lawyer, who had initially thought the case would be a straightforward win, was forced to adjust his approach, recognizing that he could not underestimate his young counterpart. The teen had not only answered questions but had also guided the direction of the case, controlling the flow of information and the attention of the room. During a particularly critical moment, the teenage attorney identified a contradiction in the testimony of a key witness. He pointed it out carefully, explaining its relevance to the case and asking for clarification in a way that was firm but non-confrontational. The witness, taken aback, struggled to respond at first, realizing that the teen had noticed something they had overlooked. The judge watched closely, clearly impressed by the teen's ability to dissect complex testimony with such precision. The teen's ability to maintain professionalism under scrutiny was remarkable. He never allowed the initial ridicule to affect his focus or calm demeanor. Instead, he used his preparation and understanding to transform skepticism into engagement and respect. His strategy was subtle but effective. By demonstrating competence, he had quietly forced the courtroom to reconsider their assumptions about age and ability. The opposing lawyer tried another line of questioning, hoping to regain control. He presented a complex scenario, filled with nuances and technicalities. The teenage attorney listened carefully, nodding slightly as he considered the implications. When it was his turn, he responded with clear reasoning, breaking down the scenario into understandable parts and addressing each aspect with logic and evidence. The courtroom was captivated by the clarity of his thinking and the precision of his words. Audience members whispered in admiration, some exchanging amazed glances. They had never expected to witness such competence from someone so young. Even the more skeptical observers could not deny the skill and maturity the teenager displayed. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, with a mix of respect, curiosity, and quiet astonishment. As the session progressed, the teen began to tie together the different threads of the case. He demonstrated how each piece of evidence supported his argument and addressed potential counterpoints before they were even raised. This level of foresight impressed everyone, showing that he was not only knowledgeable but also strategically thoughtful. The judge, witnesses, and audience could all see that this was no ordinary performance. This was genuine legal expertise in action. The teenage attorney's calm demeanor, clear reasoning, and professional conduct left a lasting impression on everyone in the courtroom. By the time he concluded this stage of the proceedings, the mood had shifted completely. The initial mockery had vanished, replaced by quiet admiration and respect. The courtroom had witnessed the transformation of perception, from skepticism to genuine recognition of talent and skill. The judge, finally breaking his silence, spoke with a tone that carried both surprise and acknowledgement. "Your preparation and understanding are remarkable. I had not anticipated this level of proficiency from someone of your age." There was no sarcasm in his voice now, only sincere respect. The teenage attorney responded politely, acknowledging the comment with humility and gratitude, never allowing pride to overshadow his professionalism. The audience quietly reflected on the remarkable performance they had witnessed. Parents, students, and other observers understood that this was more than just a display of skill. It was a lesson about the danger of underestimating someone based on appearances. The teenager had turned a situation that could have been embarrassing into a demonstration of intelligence, poise, and maturity. As the session concluded, the teen organized his notes and briefcase with the same meticulous care he had shown throughout the proceedings. He moved with calm confidence, aware that he had already achieved something important, earning the attention and respect of everyone in the courtroom, including those who had doubted him. The stage was set for the next phase of the case, and all present knew that the young attorney would continue to surprise and impress with his abilities. The courtroom had learned an unforgettable lesson about skill, preparation, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. The courtroom had grown quiet, each person fully absorbed in the unfolding events. The teenage attorney, standing confidently at the counsel table, was now in full command of the situation. His earlier calm and clarity had turned the skepticism of the judge, opposing counsel, and audience into curiosity and admiration. No one had expected that someone so young could wield such precision and knowledge in a courtroom filled with seasoned professionals. The next phase of the case began, with the teen turning his attention to a crucial witness. The witness, aware of the young attorney's skill from the previous rounds of questioning, appeared nervous. The teen recognized this immediately, yet he did not let it show in his demeanor. He approached the questioning with patience and respect, carefully structuring each question to elicit clear and honest answers. He began by asking foundational questions to establish context, making sure that the witness could explain their role in the case and their perspective on the events in question. Every question was simple in structure but deep in purpose. He allowed pauses for the witness to think, never rushing them but guiding them toward clarity. The courtroom watched, impressed by the way he balanced authority with empathy. As the witness responded, the teen noticed inconsistencies in the story. He did not confront them aggressively. Instead, he asked thoughtful, logical follow-up questions that encouraged the witness to clarify and expand. Each question revealed more detail, creating a clearer picture of the situation. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the exchange. The teen's skill at identifying critical points without seeming combative was remarkable, and it was clear that he had the respect of everyone in the room. The judge, observing intently, was now fully engaged. His initial mockery had been replaced by genuine admiration. He leaned forward slightly, following every word, noting how the teen's questioning exposed key details that could affect the outcome of the case. The judge was witnessing a rare display of talent, one that combined preparation, intelligence, and emotional control in a way that even experienced lawyers found challenging. The opposing lawyer tried to regain footing by introducing complex legal arguments, hoping to confuse or pressure the teen. However, the young attorney anticipated these tactics. He listened carefully, allowed the lawyer to finish, and then responded calmly and logically. He broke down the argument into understandable parts, addressing each element with evidence and reasoning. His ability to simplify complexity without losing accuracy impressed the courtroom further. Audience members whispered among themselves, exchanging surprised and admiring glances. They had initially thought they would witness a young, inexperienced lawyer struggle under pressure, but instead, they were seeing a masterful display of skill and composure. Parents, students, and observers all recognized that the teen had earned a level of respect that transcended age. Throughout the questioning, the teen continued to demonstrate a keen awareness of courtroom dynamics. He monitored reactions from the judge, witnesses, and opposing counsel, adjusting his tone and approach when necessary. His ability to read the room allowed him to maintain control without appearing forceful. He had transformed what could have been a chaotic or intimidating situation into a demonstration of clear, logical argumentation. During a critical moment, the teen identified a significant contradiction in the testimony of the opposing side's witness. He paused thoughtfully, then asked a series of calm, precise questions that clarified the inconsistency. The witness, realizing that they had been exposed by a keen and careful observer, fumbled slightly but attempted to explain. The teen acknowledged their answer politely, then gently guided them back to the point, ensuring that the truth emerged without confrontation. The judge, who had previously underestimated the teen, now openly showed signs of respect. He nodded at the young attorney's logic and ability to control the courtroom. Every observer could see that this was no ordinary teenager. This was someone with exceptional legal understanding and the ability to communicate it effectively. The courtroom atmosphere was now filled with quiet awe, replacing the early amusement and skepticism. The teen continued to tie together the different threads of the case, demonstrating how each piece of evidence aligned with his argument. He anticipated potential objections and addressed them proactively. The clarity and foresight in his approach impressed everyone present. Even the opposing lawyer had to acknowledge, at least internally, that the teenage attorney's skill was extraordinary. As the cross-examination concluded, the teen summarized the key points. His summary was concise, clear, and persuasive, reinforcing the strength of his case without arrogance. He spoke with a tone that was both authoritative and respectful, ensuring that the courtroom fully understood the significance of his findings. Witnesses, judges, and audience members alike were impressed by his composure and insight. The courtroom now held a sense of anticipation, waiting to see what would happen next. The teenage attorney had not only demonstrated his competence, but also commanded respect from every person in the room. His calm confidence and strategic thinking had transformed the initial skepticism into admiration. People could not stop talking quietly among themselves about the remarkable talent they had witnessed. The judge, adjusting his glasses, spoke with a measured tone. "It is evident that you have prepared thoroughly and have a deep understanding of this case. Your approach is methodical and insightful." There was no trace of mockery or doubt now, only acknowledgement of the teen's extraordinary abilities. The young attorney responded with humility and gratitude, maintaining the professionalism that had earned him such respect. The teen's handling of the case had turned the courtroom dynamic completely. The opposing lawyer, who had initially expected an easy victory, now approached the proceedings with caution. The witnesses, who had been nervous at first, now responded with care and clarity, recognizing the seriousness and competence of the young attorney. The audience, once entertained by the novelty, was now captivated by the display of skill, intelligence, and maturity. As the session drew toward a temporary close, the teen organized his notes and briefcase with meticulous care. He had demonstrated not only legal knowledge, but also the importance of preparation, strategy, and calm execution. His presence had shifted the perceptions of everyone in the room, showing that talent and professionalism were not determined by age. The courtroom left with a newfound respect for the young attorney. People reflected on the remarkable performance they had witnessed, understanding that assumptions based on age or appearance could be misleading. The teen had earned his place in the courtroom through skill, diligence, and composure, leaving an impression that would not soon be forgotten. The stage was now set for the final phase of the case. The teenage attorney had shown that he could face challenges, expose inconsistencies, and handle pressure with maturity far beyond his years. Everyone in the courtroom, from the judge to the audience, understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The young attorney's journey was far from over, but he had already demonstrated the intelligence, skill, and poise that would define the outcome of the trial and the respect he had earned from all who had witnessed it. The courtroom was silent as the final phase of the case began. Everyone was still amazed by the teenage attorney's performance so far. From the judge to the opposing lawyer, witnesses, and audience members, all had been watching in awe as someone so young handled a case with professionalism, intelligence, and calm composure. Now the stage was set for the final moments, where the full skill and preparation of the teen would become undeniable. The teen stood confidently, placing his briefcase neatly on the table. He had already shown that he could handle questioning and cross-examination, but the final phase required him to bring everything together in a compelling and logical way. He glanced around the courtroom, taking in the attentive faces, and began to outline his closing argument. He spoke slowly, clearly, and with purpose. Every word was chosen to ensure understanding, every point built on the previous one. He summarized the evidence, highlighted the inconsistencies in the opposing side's case, and emphasized the facts that strongly supported his position. The courtroom listened intently, hanging on to each word. It was as if time had slowed, and all attention was focused solely on the young attorney. The judge, leaning forward in his chair, could no longer hide his respect. The earlier skepticism had vanished completely. The teen was not only competent, he was extraordinary. His ability to connect different pieces of evidence, explain complex legal principles in simple terms, and maintain calm authority over the proceedings was remarkable. Every listener could sense the depth of preparation and intelligence that had gone into his performance. The opposing lawyer tried to interject, attempting a last-minute challenge, but the teen responded with composure. He acknowledged the point politely, then used clear reasoning and evidence to refute it. His response was so logical and thorough that the courtroom could not help but be impressed. The lawyer's tone shifted from confidence to caution, realizing that this young attorney had anticipated nearly every possible angle. Audience members, who had initially been curious or skeptical, were now fully engaged. They whispered quietly among themselves, marveling at the teen's skill and maturity. Parents, students, and other observers recognized that this performance was a lesson in preparation, confidence, and the power of clear communication. The courtroom, once a place of doubt and amusement, had transformed into a scene of admiration and respect. The teen continued, highlighting key moments from the case. He pointed out how evidence aligned with the facts he had presented, how testimony from witnesses supported his argument, and how inconsistencies in the opposing case weakened their position. His logic was precise and his reasoning was easy to follow. The courtroom could see that his conclusions were not guesses or assumptions, but the result of careful study and thoughtful analysis. As he spoke, the judge nodded occasionally, signaling understanding and acknowledgement. The teen's ability to maintain professionalism and humility, while demonstrating undeniable expertise, made a powerful impression. It was clear that this was not a performance for show, but a genuine demonstration of talent and knowledge. Every person in the room recognized the intelligence, maturity, and dedication that the young attorney possessed. When the teen concluded his closing argument, he paused, letting the point settle in the minds of everyone present. The courtroom remained silent, absorbing the impact of what they had just witnessed. Then the judge spoke, his voice steady and respectful. "It is clear that you have demonstrated remarkable understanding, preparation, and skill. I am impressed by your professionalism and insight. Your performance has been extraordinary." The teen responded politely, acknowledging the judge's words with gratitude. There was no arrogance, only a quiet confidence that had been present throughout the proceedings. He had earned the respect of everyone in the courtroom through knowledge, composure, and dedication. At this moment, a subtle revelation began to unfold. The courtroom, already impressed by the teen's abilities, learned something unexpected. The young attorney was not just a talented teen. He was a fully qualified attorney, working under a special program that allowed him to practice at an unusually young age. This revelation shocked the judge, opposing counsel, witnesses, and audience members alike. The initial assumptions based on his age and appearance were proven completely wrong. The judge, now fully aware of the teen's true status, showed a mix of surprise and admiration. "I admit I underestimated you," he said sincerely. "Your skill and professionalism are far beyond what anyone could expect from someone of your age. It is clear that you belong in this courtroom." The courtroom responded with quiet murmurs of agreement and respect. The teen's ability to handle the entire case with such clarity and precision was now fully validated. The opposing lawyer, initially skeptical and dismissive, nodded respectfully. He recognized the extraordinary ability of the teen and the dedication that went into preparing for the case. There was no resentment, only acknowledgement that the young attorney had earned his place through merit, skill, and intelligence. Witnesses who had been nervous at the beginning now expressed relief and admiration. They had been questioned with care and respect, yet exposed to sharp insight and understanding. They saw the teen not as a child, but as a professional who had earned their attention and respect through knowledge and composure. The audience, from students to parents and general observers, quietly reflected on the remarkable journey they had witnessed. They had learned an important lesson about the dangers of underestimating someone based on appearance. The teen had not only won the respect of the courtroom, but also demonstrated the power of preparation, skill, and self-confidence. As the session concluded, the teen gathered his briefcase and notes, moving with calm and measured steps. He had shown that professionalism, intelligence, and humility could overcome skepticism and mockery. His ability to command respect without arrogance left a lasting impression on everyone present. The courtroom had been transformed by his presence, and everyone would remember the young attorney who had defied expectations and demonstrated extraordinary ability. The judge called for a short recess, giving everyone time to reflect on what had transpired. People quietly discussed the teen's performance, expressing amazement at his skill, composure, and intelligence. The story of the young attorney would likely be remembered in that courthouse for years to come, as a lesson in preparation, talent, and the importance of judging others based on ability rather than appearance. As the teenage attorney left the courtroom, he walked with quiet confidence and humility. He had faced skepticism, mockery, and doubt, yet had emerged with the respect and admiration of all who had witnessed his work. His journey was a reminder that age, appearance, or initial impressions do not define ability. Talent, preparation, and professionalism do. And in that courtroom, the young attorney had proven that beyond a doubt.